So obviously I don't agree, with the same conclusion, but I'm always interested in hearing the argument and discussing it, preferably.
He's the Velociraptor atheist scientist. Let's go.
Oh yeah,
We just
only if
spoke
you
for
want
like
to.
an hour, and it's too bad you missed us, but you can kind of
I'm
be our like
sorry.
punching bag for the next
Do you really think
question.
so?
This is great. God provides. Apophatic God
Oh my
Yeah.
provides.
gosh, bro, you're abysmal. That's terrible. That's
If you don't
terrible.
want to, like I said, you might hear like debate me, bro. But whatever you want to do,
Debate
it's
me,
fine.
bro.
Yeah, I'm not like that.
Okay.
I'm not like debate me, bro.
Well,
But like whatever you
I'm
want to do.
a former atheist, extremely skeptical man, Aristotelian, who
Now that's
has
what fascinates me because when someone says they're a former atheist, it's
yeah.
such a powerful thing because so many people they're indoctrinated. They grow up religious. Very few people change religions when they're adults. But if someone says I'm an atheist, they don't believe, right? They're on the zero scale, but then they become Christian. That's like, wow, something actually convinced you to change your mind, which to me is like the good stuff. Fascinating.
Okay. But yeah, basically ex-atheist. I have good enough education in philosophy and scholasticism and different stuff of that sort. Right, it's kind of my forte. Extremely skeptical. Like I question everything, but
Please, yeah.
I would love to have a dialogue with you if that's fine.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So it was just brought up just by random chance. I stepped in here this time. A natural theology, the idea of nature is sufficient, or analyzing nature, or something about nature is sufficient to conclude a God exists. And that's just tied to the
Hmm.
Christian God, just to make it fun. So I guess if you went by that route, do you think there's sufficient natural theology or natural theological interpretation to
Hmm.
conclude therefore Christian God exists?
Yeah, I think that from the observation of things and of the study of being, that we can reason to the existence of God. Yeah.
A Christian God, or is God in general like a theistic?
Theistic God, I would say.
Oh, fair enough. So you're not saying that gives you Christian God. That takes something else, but there has to be like some God from the observations we're making. You're saying.
I mean, not necessarily from the proofs that I would usually give, but I believe that the arguments for God, coupled with um, the historical accuracy of and the reliability of the Gospels, right,
Well,
would provide a coherent model by which you can judge what worldview is more true, more false.
well, I mean that's a tough one right off the bat if we're talking about nature because you're talking about the Gospels. And do we agree that Jesus in the Gospels, I'm talking Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? He believed in like Genesis and the creation story. Is that accurate, do you think?
The creation story, it depends what you mean. If it's
Did Jesus believe in the Jewish theology of Genesis and Deuteronomy and all the Old Testament, the what do you call it, the Torah, and the stories of how life began on earth and everything?
yeah.
Oh, sure. So you think that's historically accurate? How they describe it in Genesis?
Well, I would say they're like it depends. Are you asking if it's literal or not?
No, you talked about the historical accuracy.
Yeah, I'm
So
asking
I
if
guess
you
the
believe it's
question is,
literal or not.
well, hold on. What did the Jewish people believe in the first century? What did the idea what would Jesus' teachers and contemporaries be teaching about it when he was
I was
alive?
asking if you believe it's literal or not.
Well, I think
Okay,
they
is
believe
that
it
the
was
question
literal.
that you're asking me?
Well, no, it seems it's not literal. So let's try this. Can we agree that Genesis literally read is not historically accurate?
No, no, it's not.
No, you don't? Or you,
No.
you don't believe that, or you believe it's not accurate?
I believe that it was never meant to be taken literally in every respect.
Yeah, sure, but that's the answer is yes. That wouldn't be historically accurate, literally read. In terms of like you don't think plants existed before the sun, the moon, and the stars existed.
No,
Yeah, that's fine, cool. Yeah, so that's a tough one,
it's
right?
a poem about creation from the perspective of a Jew in his time. Yeah.
I get it, man. I get it. Yeah, I mean, of course, written not in his time, but it wasn't written by Moses. Like, do you think that?
Yes, it was written by Moses. That's what the
Why do you
contemporary
think that?
scholars agree upon.
Oh, absolutely not. They
Absolutely,
very much
they do.
disagree. But let's try this. Why do you think it was written by Moses? Like, what would be their argument, just for the historical
The
side of things?
Jewish Talmudic tradition is very clear on.
Well, hold on, wait. You talked about facts, not tradition. I can agree with you.
Tradition
The
is
tradition
factual, right?
Moses rather. No,
Tradition
of
is
course not.
factual. Of course,
Of
yes.
course not.
Of course, yes. Of course, yes.
So you're just
Of
saying
course,
the
yes.
tradition must be factual? Can traditions not be unfactual?
Depends what type of tradition it is. It depends on the scenario, right?
Then the answer is yes, that some traditions are unfactual. So I guess the question becomes, if we hold to the idea that in Jewish tradition Moses wrote parts of the Torah, like the Exodus and everything, then why do you think that tradition is historically accurate?
Well, the scriptures that we have now were written by the hands of Moses, literally.
That
Right?
wasn't
But
the
we believe it
question.
was. One second, stop interrupting.
Sure, no problem.
The actual manuscripts that we have now were written by the hands of Moses. We understand that, right?
Of course.
So we would say that these stories originated from Moses, right? And this is the actual historical consensus of scholars. If you study, like, for example, Talmudic traditions, right, how they understand it.
No, I have. Yeah, they'll tell you the truth, which is these were written down from oral traditions that
Yeah.
were passed down probably less than thousands of years, but certainly, into the thousands of years and written down during the Babylonian captivity. So we seem to agree that when we talk about what we have today from the ancient Jewish traditions written down, those were actually not written by the hand of Moses, but they were actually written down by
Stories
the Pesach
originate.
and the.
The stories
Well, hold on.
originate. The stories originate from the oral testimony going back to Moses, but the actual manuscripts we have are not written by Moses'
Sorry.
hand.
Were we
No, no,
talking
yes,
about natural
we.
theology or about
Yes, we
manuscripts?
were, but we got off track here. But just close this out. So then you seem to agree with the actual scholars today, which is that there are oral traditions which Jewish
That go
people
all the way back
said.
to Moses.
Oh,
Hold on,
the
again,
scholars,
tradition. And then the scholars agree that the actual writings were from the Babylonian captivity.
Yeah,
but
the
what
actual
criteria are we going to
manuscript.
use to discern between the scholars that have it right and the scholars that have it wrong? Because not all scholars agree.
Great question.
So
A
what
great question.
criteria are we going to use to discern between all these scholarly, judgments?
I'm with you there. And this, by the way, got off track slightly because we were talking about natural theology and we were discussing the idea that
Let's talk
the
about why
Genesis.
you don't believe in a theistic
Well,
God.
hold on, dog. Almost there. The Jewish texts about Genesis are in fact not accurate vis-a-vis the natural development of the earth. So we can agree that I think we can agree. I shouldn't speak for you. That if you read Genesis, not just literally, but on its face, the idea that there's the order of creation. There are actually two orders of creation in Genesis. Both are not accurate vis-a-vis how we think naturally the earth developed. Is that fair to say, or am I wrong somewhere in your view?
I would say that the Genesis account, right, is on a literal account of how, like, entirely is on a literal account of how creation came about now.
Exactly. So reading it, you wouldn't say this is accurate in terms of how, like if you travel back in time and see how the earth formed. Basically, you're old earth creationist in some sense, right?
Yeah.
Deep time and everything. Because, of course, I happen to live near the Ark encounter and Answers in Genesis, not in Kentucky, but nearby. And, of course, there are Christians who say, no, it is literal, and the earth is 6,000 years old, and dinosaurs on the Ark and everything. So there are different takes on this, obviously. I'm not saying you have to be answered for that. I'm just saying some people have that view, which you seem to agree is not necessarily the best view.
Yeah, there's this website that's kind of like Answers in Genesis. It's called Bio-Orthodoxy, and it has the same exact view. Yeah.
I got you, brother. Yeah, so then going back to the overall natural theology thing, we agree then that the Bible, the Christian texts, can't be read literally to arrive at a accurate depiction of how nature works, where it came from, how things went, as best we understand today, of course. Is that fair to say?
So this is a lack of understanding of what I meant when I said natural theology, right? I define natural theology for you, which is that from the observances and the study of being, i.e. metaphysics, we can reason to God. That's the understanding of natural theology.
Sure. And what about looking at nature around us, how we are, what being is? How does it get you to, therefore, the God?
There are many different philosophical arguments that you arrive from the things that you observe in the world and the study of being or metaphysics.
Yeah.
Well, first we can start from the argument from change, right? The first way of Thomas Aquinas. What?
Go for it. Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure. So, argument is very simple that in this world we assert that change exists, and change is the actualization of a potency within a thing. The motion, it's a motion of going from potential to actual. So, what something potentially is gets actualized, and basically it is now what it actually is. Basically, something moving from potency to act.
Yeah.
So it's evident that change exists. Nothing can be the cause or the actualizer of its own potential at the same time and in the same sense. Something cannot be the one giving the motion and the one receiving the motion at the same time in the same sense, because that would posit
Why
a
is that the
contradiction.
case? Yeah, why is
Because
that
it
a
would
contradiction?
assume that it has motion before it has motion. That's why it's a contradiction.
So something can't potentiate its own action, or action its
Right,
own
and that,
potentiation.
but 1 second, let me clarify. I'm not saying that people can't move their own limbs, right? I'm
Yes,
saying
of
that
course.
I'm saying that you cannot be both mover and moved at the same time and in the same sense. So in the same sense is the key
Oh,
part here,
sure.
right?
And do I have to do the classic atheist hot take, which is, well, then what potentiated God's action, right? Isn't that the classic
Okay.
response people get?
Why does God have? Okay, the argument is that
Well,
God doesn't
does
have
God
passive
have
potency.
action potential? Can God do things? Can
It
God elicit
doesn't.
action?
It doesn't go from potency to act. He's
No, but God
always.
does do
One
actions,
second.
right?
I'm interrupting.
Go on.
He's eternally actual. So all of his attributes are eternally actualized, right? So he's not a mix of passive potency. He's unmoved in
I
a
understand.
okay.
So then we have a problem, right? Because now we've classified a new category of things, which are things with potency and or action, but don't require potentiation. They don't require essentially actualization
Well, there's
to
not
elicit
there's
potency.
not multiple different things that
Well,
don't
hold on,
have
wait.
potency.
You're ahead of me on that one yet. So we agree that is a category, though. That's what I said.
It's a category as yeah, they don't have okay, no. I would say that there are not multiple different things that have passive potency. There's only one thing that
Well, hold
doesn't
on.
have passive
You're
potency.
ahead of me again because that's my next question. But the question was there's a category. Even if there's just one thing, isn't there a category to classify that one thing?
Yes.
Yeah,
Which
even if
is
it's
the
just God,
unmoved.
it's category
It's the
God, right? So
unmoved.
then, yeah, exactly. Now we have a bigger problem with the argument potentially because you said there's not more than one thing. Well, wait, how could you possibly know there's not more than one thing? Why couldn't
Because
there
there
be
wouldn't
two things, three things, four things, six
that
things,
are
whatever?
both yeah, because there would be nothing to differentiate them if they're all unmoved. What would be the difference between them?
Now the question is, why couldn't there be multiple things that are
I just
essentially
gave the
eternal
argument.
or actualized?
I just gave the argument, right?
That was a question, not an argument.
Yeah, excuse me. You asked that question, and I gave the retort, right? So I
And the
don't know if you know
retort
how
is,
to.
it has
All
to
right,
be
stop it.
because.
Okay, you're going to keep interrupting. I'm going to tell you how it has to be. There cannot be multiple things that are unmoved movers, right? Because there would be nothing to differentiate them, right? Because the understanding is that the unmoved mover is perfection itself, right? And perfect things is a thing which you cannot find a lack in. That's why that they don't have passive potency, because something that moves from potential to actual, something that changes, isn't perfect. So the question would be, the retort would be, what would be what would be the thing that differentiates between the unmoved mover 1 and the unmoved mover 2?
Would be there various traits that are distinct, like if it's a god, or if it has consciousness, or if it's a non-conscious entity, or if it's a non-conscious, like a collection of forces or laws, perhaps. But I mean, you just added perfection, which was nowhere in your argument. You simply plopped in, it's also perfect. Well, wait, how did you justify that? I mean, let's try this. Could there be, essentially the question, what's the logical contradiction of an unmoved mover that's
Okay,
imperfect? Why is perfection required?
what would differentiate between unmoved mover 1 and unmoved mover 2? You
Did
haven't
you hear my
justified that.
question was about
You haven't.
perfection?
Yeah, don't answer my argument with a random question that isn't actually that isn't actually have to go to the core of my argument. What differentiates them? Can you make the argument?
I just answered that, which is the
No, you didn't.
characteristics of those unmoved.
Okay, so
Well, let me try again.
what characteristic?
Let me
That's begging the
let me try
question.
the characteristics of those unmoved movers that would likewise have the same quality or fall in the same category. But
What
that's why you
characteristic?
mentioned.
What
Hold on, Fred.
characteristic?
Hold
You're
on, dude.
begging the
Slow down.
question.
Slow down,
Stop begging
dog.
the question.
I'd like to
I'm not your
respond.
dog. I'm not your dog. Answer the
Okay.
question.
Because you brought up the word perfect, which is why.
Okay, yeah. Are you going to answer the question? What differentiates them? So, what is a
I
characteristic?
mean, we're having a conversation.
What is the
I thought
characteristic?
you. I thought you said.
What is the characteristic? Can you answer the question? of what the characteristic is? Because it seems like you can't, right? Because that's the actual focus of the argument. I only brought up perfection as a reason for why they don't have passive potency. Perfection is that which you can't find a lack in. Things that don't have passive potency are necessarily perfect because they don't have motion. They're motionless. Imperfect things change, right? I only brought that in as an extra characteristic. My argument is not hinge upon that. My argument is what differentiates them. And all you said is the characteristic. What is the characteristic?
I said the characteristics of the entities that fall
What's
into that
characteristic?
category.
What
Like,
characteristic?
again, I've already answered this question. Can you listen? Are you ready to listen?
Yeah, what's the characteristic?
The characteristics.
Okay, what are the characteristics?
Multiple characteristics
What are the characteristics?
that entities can have, include
What are the characteristics? Stop avoiding this question.
things like their qualities and attributes, whether they have personal
What
agency,
attributes?
whether
What
they're a
attributes?
collection of forces, things of that
What-
nature. So we're
What
talking about the can you calm down? It's okay. We're talking
can
about
you answer the
attributes
question?
like I'm actually still talking, which
Okay, yeah. No, you're not talking anymore because I muted you. Right. So you're just not going to answer the question. That's all right. Yeah, you're not a true skeptic, right? You're not a true atheist. You're just intellectually dishonest. I asked you, how do you differentiate them? Their characteristics. Okay, what is the different characteristics? Their attributes. What is the different attributes? Their properties. What is the different properties? Their forces. What is the different forces? You're not answering the question, right? And the argument is that there would be nothing to differentiate between the thing that doesn't have passive potency here and the other thing that doesn't have passive potency here. There can be only one thing that is simple and uncomposed, only one thing that doesn't have passive potency. Because the only way to distinguish between items would just be their proper telos, or with a proper function. Things that don't have composition, things that don't have passive potentia, right, don't have different functions. Right? There'd be no way to differentiate between them if they're not made up of parts. They're both simple entities, right? What would make entity 1 different from entity 2? Right? Because the only thing that differentiates between things would be their respective parts. In respect to creatures, right? In respect to their function, right? But you won't answer the question, right? Of course. Yeah, so zero argumentation, zero philosophical knowledge, just complete goober bullshit, right? And that's how you deal with it. Right there. Boom. There you go. Very easy. Very easy, straightforward. Bullshitting, don't know what you're talking about. It's whatever. You could tell when they haven't engaged in an argument when the first thing they say is, well, why doesn't God have passive potentia? Who is the one that moves him? I mean, just completely boomer, brain dead type shit. So, there you go. That's how it usually goes.